Hello, listeners out there in Tinseltown. We're here for another episode of To Boldly Watch.
You know it. We've got your favorite hits rolling through. We've got Picard discovering some things about himself. We've got the crew coming together. It's all here.
I hope you like a whole lot of Patrick Stewart, because you're getting him not only in your A plot, but also your B plot.
That's the right amount of Patrick Stewart for me.
Mm-hmm. And believable the whole time.
That's right. It's episode 318, Allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well said. Do you want to do the rest of it?
Picard finally goes into the poker game.
There it is, the full summary.
He does feel out of place even in his normal character. So for him to have come in there was shocking for everyone. I loved it. Captain Picard and 3 others are abducted and imprisoned by an unknown force and replaced by duplicates.
Duplicates.
The beginning of this episode, we just have Picard lounging in his chaise, having a good read, about to nod off, when the obelisk from 2001 shows up. Right?
Yeah.
But this time it has
it's
a
an
green
ingot
screen.
from Skyrim.
It has okay. Or the original Windows desktop background.
Yeah.
Just clouds.
Yep.
You know, a great idea for a plot when you're on a spaceship is alien abduction from the spaceship.
Well,
the irony.
I wonder if there's something about this in Memory Alpha, beyond just the surface level, but this is very reminiscent of the pilot episode of the first series of Star Trek. The whole thing is part of the crew gets captured and put in sort of a zoo type of thing. So this is not uncommon ground for Star Trek of we're poor humans and we don't know what's happening. But I think it's Picard's way that he solves it that makes it really interesting.
Mm-hmm,
I love this episode for exactly that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to answer your question, Memory Alpha does mention it, Xander.
Good.
Because
I could have looked myself, but I refuse.
Well, it's just, it's just an entry saying that there are similar themes of aliens conducting experiments on a kidnapped crew, which happens in a number of episodes, including notably, which I think is the one you're talking about, The Cage. Is that the first one? And there's also the Empath, which happens as well in the original series. It was a good experiment to get Patrick Stewart doing all different types of sort of things in this episode.
Yeah, we got him singing, dancing, making speeches,
going on dates,
so we
solving
didn't give a real
escape rooms.
synopsis yet.
Right.
What's the official synopsis?
Well, we did say it. It was great. I'll say it again.
No,
Okay.
I don't believe you. We did.
Okay. Captain Picard and 3 other people are abducted
No,
and
now I
imprisoned.
remember, because I thought people. What a way to classify them. Sorry, guys, I'm really with it today.
That's all right.
It's all good.
Everybody's confused because Picard's acting a little strange. So Picard disappears, and we notice energy readings in his quarters, and that's really strange. We contact him, but he doesn't respond. So Worf marches on down there, and we open the door, and Picard's
I've got security clearance.
And Picard does still appear, and he's like, "What's going on?"
Hey.
And that's our dramatic end. But we find out that actual Picard is in some poorly lit room somewhere with some unconscious folks.
If I can jump in, Worf comes to the door, and whoever is impersonating Picard, because we saw him abducted, we know that's not him. We don't know where he is yet. We immediately know that they are very good at impersonating him because he comes to the door with a glass of wine, maybe it's port, and a good book. Oh, right. Yeah. They've already got him down, so what the F is happening?
Yeah, one thing, and I'm going to jump around in the time a little bit, but one thing that they never really explained was how they were so good at being Picard and knowing these nuances and these character details. Besides, they say, when we impersonate someone, we get all of their memories and stuff like that. But
Did they say that?
They fully.
That was their
all we are is our memories, Xander.
Right.
You have those. You've unlocked it.
I hear that, Xander. I kind of wish they'd explain that more because it makes sense for how poorly he disguised himself, right? Because the duplicate knew that Jean-Luc Picard loved sea shanties, but he doesn't know that he doesn't regularly sing them on the ship, right?
Yeah.
So they took the information that is technically correct,
right?
But they applied it the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
So because they're like this analytical species, they took data, but they just didn't know how to use it properly. I love that.
Well, and that just speaks to Patrick Stewart's acting as well, that there are so many layers that he can bring to the table that he fully is like a different person, and it's believable to the audience. And this is one of the few times that the audience is in on a secret that the crew is still trying to figure out, because a lot of times we go with them of like, what is this mystery?
Right. Yeah, a real testament to the acting. It didn't occur to me till the episode was over that I was like, oh, yeah, and then the other Picard that wasn't him, because I really was convinced.
Yeah, that guy was a good actor.
He was.
Yeah, that guy was a really good actor. But it was
that
so
was Stuart
subtle.
Patrick. He doesn't have a knighthood.
Yeah, he really would do anything for that knighthood. It was so subtle. He was playing it exactly as he would, but just a few of his actions seemed out of the ordinary, but not out of the ordinary of his desires, like inviting Beverly over for a romantic dinner. There's always tension between those two. In episode, I think, 2 of the whole show, there was that sexy virus. You know, everybody had the bang.
Everyone got horny
Yara
on
and
me.
Data got it on. Yeah, the horny virus, and they flirted hardcore.
And they were resisting themselves the most too. That's what I loved about their interactions, because like they rationally knew what was happening, and they were still like physically like yearning for each other, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Aren't
that
they always?
This was a great way to do that scene too, because it's a way for us to get these emotions out without having to break Picard as a strong, tough captain, and we get a glimpse into that relationship, and they both mutually decide, or like Beverly is the real person in the situation, decides like, oh, I'm okay with where we are, and we assume that real Picard is also there. It's nice to just have that relationship and sit in it.
I liked the realness of that conversation, of her saying exactly the line you just said.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with where our relationship currently is.
Exactly. And that dress.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Dress.
I loved it.
Better pajamas on Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Another Asian and Japanese inspired.
Yeah, like
wrap.
the kimono style.
The Picard's doppelganger kind of begins his new life on the Enterprise by ordering them to not go meet up with the USS Hood as they were supposed to, but goes to this pulsing star, and he wants to go there kind of slow compared to how fast they could go there, which is the first thing that kind of everybody is like, something's a little different here. And Riker detects this and understands that sometimes there are missions that he can't know about for security reasons, so he bows down to that, but still something's up, right?
Well, and Picard asked for that sidebar with Riker, which was a very strategic move on this smart alien species part that we don't even know who it is yet. All we know is they've captured Picard, the real Picard, and he's in a different location that we'll talk about in a second. But he pulls Riker aside and says, you understand we've always had this trust, right? And you believe in me. And even if there's something where I can't be as fully communicative with you as I normally am, you still got my back, right? Like, what a way to come at that.
Yeah.
Well done.
It's brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
Especially when you find out that their overall goal was just to find out about structures of command and how people react under pressure.
Right? I didn't think about that applied to the beginning of the episode until now, because we always think, okay, someone's hijacked the ship and they have these nefarious purposes and they want to get something or kill someone or do the thing. But really, it was just to study their behavior.
Mm-hmm. That's like the third option. It's either hostile, friendly, or observing.
Yeah, like that crazy baby face that wanted to Thanos half the ship.
Right.
Well, so this actually makes me think, now that you guys say it like this, is like, maybe their experiment was not only successful, but maybe they intended for the doppelganger to not be super great at their job, right? Because they want to see the command structure and how people react. It's like, we're going to put something weird here, but something they should know is wrong. And let's see if they will drive themselves into a pulsing star on our order.
Well, and that's the thing is, you can see the differentiation. They not only get the results of the people that they took and put into the cage, but by placing a doppelganger, you have someone that's directly in the conflict. They said they have a telepathic link to everybody, so they have like eyes on the ground. So they're getting this experiment results for whole ships or whole colonies or wherever they're coming from.
Yeah, wherever they are. We never really find that out.
Where are they? Because flash over to this alien species ship that I don't know if we ever get a name for what their species is called, or at least I don't
think
remember
so. Yeah.
But Picard wakes up in a room. There is a woman who is Bolian. There is a guy who is Mizarian. And then later we meet a Red Lion man, and I stopped taking thorough notes at that point. But eventually we have 4 people in this sort of no-exit Sartre situation where they are each other's hell, and they eventually Picard...
They are each other's hell?
Yep, it's the ultimate punishment.
Well, that's the plot of the play No Exit.
Yeah. Right.
Hell is other people.
I got really excited about this because, plug for my other show, I play a Bolian in Clear Skies. I play a Bolian engineer, no less. So I was very excited to see this cadet, and notably that she had hair, because I hadn't seen a Bolian that had hair, and I was like, it makes sense.
Nice. Yeah.
Or unless that's the doppelganger.
Unless that's the doppelganger.
Right?
Yeah. Who knows?
Oh boy.
What if it was just like a
hungry.
huge
Do you guys want
perm?
to eat this edible urinal sponge?
Poison!
I thought it was like Jell-O at first, but it was very firm.
It looks like gelatin. Like if I was going to make that prop, I would make it like a gelatin base something.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call those urinal
cakes?
Urinal cakes.
Yeah, delicious.
We don't need to keep saying that.
I've used a urinal like once, so.
Oh, well.
I don't know what they're called. That's why I had to.
Okay. I never realized what
urinal culture.
The information that I have, I didn't realize how specific that was.
Wow. But of course, the big problem is when the 4th person is transported in, they are from a very Klingon-y type society, very warrior-like, and naturally it is poison to eat the urinal cake.
Right. You say Klingon-y because he's dressed in leather and is super aggressive with knives, right?
But that's fair.
I think that's a fair comparison. That's what makes him that.
Yeah.
And definitely. So Esok, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Yes.
These 4 are trapped, and they're not sure who is keeping them there. And this room is also very strange. So they have like a food dispenser. They have 4 beds, and they have a door. Do they have a bathroom?
They didn't seem
never
like
mentioned.
It.
Well, urinal cakes.
Urinal cakes.
Do what you will.
Probably a drain
Don't pee on the dispenser.
Is this the first showing of this trope? Probably not. I bet it's written in short stories before. But the abduction that leads to the room where you don't know who your observers are.
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of related to a lab rat, except there's walls instead of a cage.
Well, I mean, the lab rat thing is referenced because of the maze, right? That Picard mentions later.
I mean, the classic trope of this would be like a locked room mystery. Classically, someone is a murderer, but you don't know who the murderer is. But in this case, someone is the abductor, but you don't know who the abductor is. And even figuring that out is part of the puzzle.
Like, we still haven't figured out who the murderer is on this podcast.
Or have we?
What? Well, the murderer knows.
From episode 1.
Or do they?
Well, Vanessa's not here to tell us because she died in episode 1, so we'll never know.
We don't say the V word.
Oh, sorry.
Uh-oh. But it is a very witch hunty, which is from a politicized term. But anyway, there's like, is there a witch? Is there not a witch? We don't know. And they all start accusing each other of, well, you were the one that did this. And you don't seem like you should be here because this. And that's when, early in the episode, Picard lays his trap.
Yeah.
So when Picard was defending himself, the cadet mentions some of the things he's done, and Picard looks up when she mentions a particular event, and he also...
What first year is going to study the accolades of every starship captain? So bizarre.
I had a few thoughts about this. One, that she could have just been a super fan of Picard, that like I just knew everything. And then two, she could have just gone along with, because his big plan is like, I'm going to suggest something that is not common knowledge. But I'm like, she could have just been like, oh yeah, that too. But the thing, she had intimate knowledge of like what went down at the event as well. And that was the whole thing.
It was like top secret information, right?
But if I was talking to Picard and he's like, also, I did this thing, I'm not going to say no. Like, that's not you, or I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, if I was the cadet, I'd be like, all right, I'll level with you.
Yeah.
I'm an intelligence officer.
Yeah.
Undercover at the academy. We're trying to find some bad instructors.
Layers on layers.
That's the first thing I can come up with is bad instructors. But right. I'm sure
he'll go. Those classic bad instructors.
Yeah.
Do I sound too hot? Yeah, I am clipping a little bit. Thank you.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, so we have a lot of testing of course, the one thing that we can actually address, which is the door. And Picard tries a tactic early on, which is to start tapping out little sequences, and we learn, yes, that he's signaling prime numbers. And I was like, that's such a brilliant way of doing it. Is that the standard way we try to communicate our cognition to species we don't know how to communicate with?
I think, well, there have been multiple attempts. We've made that golden disc of different things, including prime numbers, but other ways to sort of demonstrate intelligence, being
but
music.
Mostly just sea shanties.
Mostly sea shanties. It's all of TikTok. They just downloaded it onto a golden disc and shot it into space. We haven't heard it from the aliens because they're busy watching all of it.
They're busy saying, oh my God, I'm so behind. I don't even have a TikTok yet.
For reference, Xander's referring to the Voyager Golden Record, which was an album. I almost said it's a phonograph record, I guess, that was sent with Voyager when it launched out eventually out of our solar system, right?
Yes. Real Voyager, not Star Trek Voyager.
Right. I think it's going to take several hundred years for it to even truly get out of the solar system. But that has a bunch of, I believe, music, and does it prime numbers on there as well?
I think so. A prime number sequence.
And images?
I feel like
maybe a
should
Fibonacci sequence.
Abbott and Costello, who's on first?
Classic English comedy.
I have some of the things. There's actually images on it too. There's a photo of Jupiter. There's a photo of humans eating, drinking, and licking food. There's a woman in a store.
Licking seems very particular.
Well, there's she's licking ice cream.
How we do it.
I think it's just showing different methods of ingestion. There's also a photograph of Egypt, the Red Sea, and the Sinai Peninsula. Interesting. And then, of course, there's also the I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's like the Arecibo message, that's a radio signal we send out.
Oh yeah.
And it has all the numbers and also like human beings on it, but it's like a modal form, right? Like there's a visual way of looking at it if you like look at the waveform or something.
Out in a pattern. Yeah.
Right.
Because we don't know how it would be received by like another transmitter or something like that. But no, and I feel like these tactics, the things that he's doing would be, I wrote down, this is cool to see the Starfleet training of an elite officer like in action. Like these are the steps that this captain will take when they're also presented with someone that is supposedly supposed to follow their orders. You know, he's basically stepping into command. And also, maybe he's just very good at escape rooms, and he's like, I was in one. This was the answer.
Hey, escape room makers, if you make prime numbers like tapped out be an answer to like showing off your sentience, I think that's brilliant, and you should just let people escape immediately. That's good.
Yeah. Or shock them.
I think I found a plot hole, though. So if he says to the Bolian woman anything, then because they're all of one mind, then because his mind was taken and they downloaded all his memories, they'd know that he knew that was classified.
Except they got it at the moment the copy was made. So they're not connected to the real Picard's mind. I bet you're onto something. I bet that the Bolian cadet, that alien, used the information that the Picard doppelganger has in his head to be like, oh yes, aren't you familiar with this thing and this thing? That's probably where she got that classified information. It's not that they're super intelligent. She
would have gotten the information through Picard's memories that event happened, as well as getting the information that event was classified.
But this is the problem that we're seeing with the Picard doppelganger. It's the use of the information without the situational awareness of what in context does that mean. Singing the sea shanty or, being a fan of a sea shanty.
It's also maybe they download, well, they are one mind, so they would be even super smarter. Because they are pooling all of their minds all the time.
Think.
So they'd be like,
you see those heads?
Level intelligent.
Those heads were huge. Like, there's got to be a big cranium in there for sure. You're probably right,
They're
Becca.
pretty stupid for being so smart.
But again, I'm wondering if part of the experiment isn't to show their hand a little bit, not unlike the poker scenario, right? Where they're actually, they kind of want to see where they figure it out, and therefore, use that information. It's like it's a control versus a variable. This shit might be the variable. Maybe they'd have a little bit of a twist to the Picard that he's not a very good doppelganger. That's also an armchair theory. Who knows?
Yeah.
The other thing is, with this armchair theory, perhaps they knew when they gave that information that they were allowing Picard to solve the puzzle.
But I don't. Yeah, that's possible. I feel like they didn't want that part of the experiment solved that way because, that's why they wanted that person there to observe. But who knows?
They had to go find new test subjects after this.
I figure. Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's like, I can imprison you whenever I want, and he didn't say, "Don't do this to anybody else." I know, but still, the other thing too, with what you mentioned, Becca, is like, I'm sure they got like a library of information as soon as they take over somebody, so they probably can't go through all of it super cleanly to figure out what's what. But the nuances exactly. So eventually we do a team activity where all four of us prisoners attempt to open the door with a combination of all of our skills and really brute strength, and the prisoners open the door to reveal
another door or a wall. I thought this was kind of cool. We saw some principles of like psychology at play with like Pavlovian theory of I touched this thing and it shocked me. I'm not touching that again. And like just have it spelled out plainly like that. But it also is the source of conflict, which we find out later was intentional. Of this person would be first in the room and do some experimenting to cause hostility towards the other, in the same sense that one can't eat the food that's provided, so eventually he's going to eat one of the other prisoners.
Wow.
Yeah. I also they did a good job of making Kovathol the red herring for a long time too, because he really doesn't participate in a lot physically, right? And he's always telling everybody not to tamper with too much, right?
Yeah. Can we talk more about that? In all of Mazarian culture, wow, all they do is get conquered over and over and over again.
Yeah.
What the F?
Listen, speaking as a French person, we don't have the best military. No, just kidding.
French.
No. This is one of the things where it seems like they may be wink, wink, nudge, nudging at the Star Trek trope of like all species fall into one lump of like, well, you're this, so you have to act that. You're a Vulcan, you have to be logical. You're Klingon, you have to be aggressive. And so they just sort of play into that stereotype of like, okay, there's a whole species of aliens that are just passive doormats, and that's how they survive.
Oh.
As if you also can't have like multiple cultures within a species, which is just that's part of it, right? Like, and all these
person them from the planet if that happens with episodes.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time in the episode, I was like, well, it's gonna be him, right? But I also know not to trust those instincts anymore, because Star Trek is really good about not letting the obvious happen.
At least Next Generation is, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, maybe that's not always true. Meanwhile, back aboard the Enterprise, Crusher and Picard go on a little date. Something a little more intimate than just 10 forward, right? Go to his personal quarters.
Yeah.
I feel very uncomfortable. He's too full of surprises today.
How was his romanticism? I still thought he
killed it.
The doppelganger did great. Yeah, right?
He's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, how did Beverly resist is the question. That didn't make any sense at all. And she wanted him to continue convincing her, because that's why she was so reluctantly stood outside the door. I was like, wait.
Yeah, what are you kicking me out for? Hold on. Yeah.
Hold on. You got to tell me you want to be bad, and then we'll be bad. But this is a terrible idea.
Doppelganger's a tease, man.
Yeah,
but it's
really
that
is.
Situational awareness, reading the room. They can't do it.
Right. Additionally, Picard actually. Before Picard enters, Troy and Riker are talking about Picard's weird behavior in 10 Forward, right? And
one thing that I was like, why did they utilize Troy? Like, she should have been able to right away pick up.
Right. And so I think that would have been too, like...
testament to how close, because it was a good copy. It did have all his memories.
And I'm probably walking around with the confidence that Picard walks around with anyway, right? Is what my guess is. But they did utilize her in the poker scene when he asked her, he pulled her out and he asked her about like, is anybody suspicious of anything?
Yeah.
Or like,
well, now.
I know, right? She gave him such a look down the corridor. I was like, what is happening?
Listen, Becca, you're going to tell me if Jake's going to like jump ship on the podcast, right? Like, if there's any sort of mutiny or anything, like you'll let me know.
Well, yeah, but now I feel like there's something I don't know.
Sorry.
Maybe
Jake,
I should just jump ship.
Jake, you'll let me know if Becca's going to jump ship, right?
Absolutely. I think it's going to happen soon.
I'm right here.
Oh, dang.
Anyway, we got to see Troy. It was showing just how extremely close it was to the real Picard. And that she had to not use her Betazoid powers, but use her own intuition to even know there's anything wrong.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, Riker mentions how odd he's being, and they kind of start to talk about it. But then he enters, and someone's like, "Hey, Captain!" and he starts waving to the whole 10 Forward.
Here's the thing: he claims he's like, "I want to buy a round for everyone, or ale for everyone." It's like we don't have money.
Free.
And I don't want ale.
But again, I think that's a nod to the fact that they know his stories and what he likes, right? But he's read them in literature or whatever. Right. So he's reenacting that there, and they just don't understand the difference between those memories. He's also probably, knowing Picard, fantasized about doing something like this.
Oh, 100%.
In like a seaside tavern.
That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. But I like that he did find the like one little group of guys that knew all the words. And my favorite was Geordi.
Group that's just taking a break.
Yeah. But what was it? It was Geordi and Worf that were just kind of singing along and then did... It was so good.
People know that song really well. Were you able to sing along with it, Xander?
No, I had no idea. No, it's just that
was a
best life. I mean, would you have been surprised if people were like, wow, for some reason I like Picard better than ever?
I wouldn't.
He's a lot more fun at parties.
I would like to. I think it might be some of a celebrity situation, right? Because we are with the bridge crew; they interact with the captain all the time. But the ship is huge, so a lot of the crew probably just hears stories about the amazing things he does. So when he shows up in 10 Forward and sings, they're like, "Oh, it's Picard."
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a captain who like regularly like tangos with like immortal beings like Q and stuff like that. Like the intimidation factor must be high on this ship.
Did you say tango on purpose? Because I didn't know he danced.
I'm sure we will see a dancing scene between those two at some point.
Yes, we do see him ask Beverly to dance after she says, "No, we can't do this," and before he says, "Okay, we're done now. Goodbye."
Yeah.
Sexy date.
So after the singing and the weird sing-along, I guess we should say, Riker gets all of the senior staff together in his quarters and says, all right, we're all in agreement that this is wonky, right? And so everybody's like, yeah, but we don't know what to do about it. So, and we also don't know what this mission is. So let's see what happens when we get to the star. Well, we get to the star, and Picard wants to drive the ship as close to it as possible.
When we were in the conference scene, I do want to give a shout out to the editing in this. A lot of the editing was fantastic, but most notably here, there were questions that Riker was asking. Then it would cut to real Picard sort of answering those questions. So, for instance, I wrote down, prove to us you're not the enemy. And then it cuts to the other Picard, but basically saying the same thing to the other prisoners. And it's just so well done.
Oh, I didn't notice that parallel.
Absolutely.
That's great.
I really like the parallels between the Picard A plot and the Picard B plot.
Because I think they were worried that it might be too confusing for audiences to see him in those two locations. But Patrick Stewart is so good at convincing us that they're two different people that it just like enhances everything else that they did.
Did they do something different with his belt for the copy? It felt like his doppelganger had a different belt on.
I know that this season they've been messing with the uniforms, going from the 1-piece to the 2-piece, so it may just have been more noticeable.
That is true. The uniforms are going through some changes in season 3 because of comfort and stuff, because this is like the first time they've also gotten those new uniforms, so I think they're still perfecting them. So possibly, good notice.
High collar and 2-piece.
Maybe. In this meeting, there's one other thing I want to point out, which is that everybody's anecdotally like, yeah, he's been being weird. And Data, of course, is the only one that doesn't have a fallible human memory and says, also, remember there was a weird reading in his quarters and we all went there and nothing had happened? You all forgot about that.
Yeah.
They were distracted by poker.
I mean, Data provided actual data as opposed to, anecdotal evidence. You're right. That's a good point.
And we'll get to this scene, but Data, I really wanted a reaction that we didn't get from Data when the chain of command is broken later, when they finally mutiny, which they decide in this scene not to do yet. But everybody's like, okay, on your toes, watch him. We all know something's weird, right? Which was a really important scene because then later when the moment does come, they stand together.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it happens, I think, right after this scene, right? Because they go to the star, and then he's like, all right, I want to keep going closer. And Data's like, well, the shields are dropping, and we could be vaporized. He's like, yeah.
We will be. You will kill all of us.
Right?
Wesley, and he's like, Wesley, drive on in. This poor kid.
Yeah, that's what I thought the whole time of, like, what for Wesley, what a situation to be in, to participate in a mutiny possibly, or, like, destroy the ship and the pressure that he's under.
Mm-hmm. And I think
maybe there was a very choice.
Maybe there was a very brief scene where Riker does confront Picard one more time off to the side of like, "Hey, you need to tell me about this, right?"
Yeah,
he say something like that. He's like, "You need to tell me," and he's like, "You've never asked me to tell you before. You know that I need to keep secrets." He's like, "Yeah, but this is different."
Yeah, you haven't endangered the ship like this, or you don't care about what happens to the ship.
So then when we get to the bridge,
was in front of everyone.
Was it? I can't remember. I don't think so.
I think
it was
part
in the ready
of the big
room.
Confrontation scene.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, so it happens right after, and that's when, Riker says, "Belay that order," and we turn around and, Picard is stopped, and Picard doesn't really have anything to like. This doppelganger doesn't have anything to like defend himself. He's just like, "No, you need to follow my orders."
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jake. I want to amend my earlier statement. You are correct. There is one more confrontation, and Picard threatens Riker and says, "Ooh, do I need to remove you from your post?"
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So when Riker tries to take over, Picard's like, "Hey, Worf, get him out of here," and Worf doesn't say a word.
He stands perfectly still, which was the best reaction. Not a movement, not a glance.
And they pull the Enterprise away from the star. And then meanwhile, back in the laboratory, after the door has been revealed to be revealed to be just a wall, Picard shows his trap, right? He shows his hand.
Mm-hmm. And Napoleon. No. It's always the quiet one.
Matena Haro is revealed to have been the captor the whole time and is part of a species that I don't think they get named at all. They are just big-headed and also telepathic, and
they hate magenta light. They just hate it.
Can't stand it. Well, and the way that he solves this mystery is they all have different leadership styles, but she wasn't a leader at all, so that's what made him think she might be just an observer, because there are those who are sworn to obey would be the cadet, sworn to surrender, sworn to fight, and sworn to command. And those are the different leadership styles that they wanted to study, all being contrasted.
Yep. And again, they got a bigger sample size with having the doppelgangers in their place as well, by observing the whole ships or wherever they came from.
Sciencing.
A bigger sample size. Mm-hmm. Well, Picard calls them out. They appear. They admit what has happened. And before anybody can really punch them for doing this, they all get teleported back home. And Picard appears on the bridge with one of these by his side and says, "Oh, hold on, everybody. It's all cool." And it turns out that the doppelganger was one of these in disguise the whole time. And then there's a little bit more shenanigans that happen, right?
The glances and the looks and the nods.
Data had such a little smirk on his face too.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, keep it straight.
Yeah. You can't.
You're not allowed.
But this was another, it was funny that this, I think, would be a little bit of a plot hole in that they gave another ultimatum for the species of like, we hate being imprisoned. And I'm like, but you were just a bully in that. I guess they weren't actually imprisoned, but she was in that scenario. You'd think she would have showed her hand or something, but whatever.
But she
trap
was
him
in
in a force
field. Yeah, she was in control.
And it was this idea that if one of them is imprisoned, all of them are imprisoned.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Which is, as we all know, like a cruelty, right? And so Picard's like, well, listen, we can do the same thing to you, so you need to knock this off. But he doesn't like say it for like everybody. He's just like, leave us alone. I was like, Picard.
Oh, that's true.
Do experiments in other ways. Get volunteers. Pay your volunteers. Okay.
Pay your volunteers. Yeah. Well, he does bring up the concept of this being an immoral assault.
Right. Imprisonment is an injury.
Right. Yeah, must respect the rights of other races, implying others.
Yeah, sure.
And like gave him a taste of their own medicine. It's like, see, you don't like it. Don't do that.
I'm rewatching a million times to try and get these looks that he's giving to the crew.
And it's just because in the beginning, they mentioned something along the lines of like, oh, we should speak or something like that so they know that we communicate verbally, because that might not be the case. And they say we communicate telepathically. So then at the end, when they're like, we're like, oh, it's merely verbal communication. It's reading the room. It's situational awareness. It's the group effort.
Oh, so good. That's so good. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But yeah, they didn't communicate verbally at all. It was all the nods, and then it happened.
Yeah. They're not even exactly telepathic. They're something more than telepathic because they share all knowledge.
Yeah.
They're hive mind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it's so subtle. He just looks at someone. They're like, oh, okay, let me push buttons over here because I know what that
shenanigans.
meant. You just looked at me.
But can you imagine someone in the chain of command that got it wrong? That was like, they look at each other, they imprison them, and then someone shoots them with a disruptor. And like, I thought that was the kill look.
But it's like, oh, I thought you wanted me to go into the pulsar star.
Yeah.
Or you just start singing the sea shanty.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they trail off like, oh, oops.
Oh, no? That wasn't the time? Okay.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Great episode. Really
great
fun.
Episode.
I like another episode where like the A plot and the B plot actually have a lot to do with each other, and in some ways on their surface level are like the same in some ways, right? It's finding out what's going on with this person, right?
And when all is said and done, we got some great alien makeup, not just from like the prisoners, but the people, the alien species that were keeping them prisoner, like a lot of prosthetics. It wasn't just a uniform on a human or a nose bridge.
The unnamed species outfits as well. They've got like a mesh that goes all the way down to the crotch and up the back and on the arms. But
yeah, that was an intimate one.
Really interesting choice.
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah. Great makeup. You know, my favorite moment is the moment when Picard, I mean, it's always when he solves the puzzle, but when he was in the laboratory room and said, haha, but earlier. And it was one of those really like, yeah, I remember that.
Right? It's very much the Sherlock Holmes like parlor scene of at the end of the murder mystery, you've got someone explaining who done it.
Oh, so good. So good. What is that activates a certain part of the brain that's like, I get it, you trickster.
I think it's our lived experience because we've had things like that and it reawakens that feeling within us.
Oh.
I think it's like when we learn something new too that we like get excited because there's like a new neural pathway that opened up in our brain for the very first time. Yeah. The sound of a wrinkle forming in your brain is like
the synaptic dendrites of synapse A went into synapse B, and it was overwhelmingly positive. I've been reading a lot about brain chemistry lately.
Nice.
A and B just got together now? Wow.
I mean, they've been shipping it forever.
It's really like, it'll give information, but that information isn't passed on unless it's overwhelming information.
They should just be comfortable with the relationship they have now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, that's Allegiance. Next week, we'll be taking a captain's holiday. Because Picard's going to take a much-needed vacation on the vacation planet of Risa.
Woo, Risa!
But he gets interrupted by a little bit of an archaeological caper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. I met a girl named Risa in acting class. I wonder if she was named after this episode.
I think you've actually made this very inquiry earlier in this podcast.
I gotta
and I think we found out she was, right?
I have nothing new to say.
Isn't she Gates McFadden's kid?
I think so.
Okay. She's not Gates McFadden.
You brought her up.
Bye.
I did want to say,
McFadden?
lay in the coordinates, but before we say anything, we got to give each other a cheeky nod. Something happened between us that we don't remember. Engage.